Praise the Lord, everyone. Thank you for tuning in with Dr. Leisha, the preacher. Okay. Yes, guys. Yes. Shaquille O'Neal is another black man that I believe is worthy of his poly life. However he want to do it. He's open. He's honest, you know, about it. No shame to the game. But what I like most is he already put his time in. He successfully raised a black family already. He's still connected to his children. And, everybody knows about his successful career. But, outside of that, the fact that he successfully raised a black family and now that he's a divorced man, you know, and as far as the quality of his marriage, whether he was cheating in his marriage and all that, that's between he and his wife. We may have details of it or whatever, but at the end of the day, that was something that went on in their marriage, and how they handled it was their, that's how they chose to do it. But today, he's a quote unquote free man to live his life as he please. And so, based on a video that I watched, I'm not sure how old the video is or anything like that, but I believe I heard him say out of his own mouth that he had four women, living in his home. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem with it. When it comes to, you know, raising a family, he's an older man. He can check that box. He did his job. I don't believe he owed Most High anything, when it comes to, you know, taking care of his family, and I'm sure his wife was well provided for, during the divorce, and she probably has her own life doing whatever, and now he's living with four women. So, and if these women all live together, then they know about each other, so I don't see a problem. And as you all may have heard me speak about Nick Cannon, I don't have a problem with his life. I don't. All these women know about each other. They agree to be, you know, baby mama number 5, 6, 7, whatever. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, consent. Consent is so important. Honesty, consent, people choosing for themselves how they want to live their life. And as I've pointed out, these men's lives, you know, are similar to the men in the Bible that we read about. And a lot of these men in the Bible, God, according to the Bible, chose these men, used these men's their gifts, talents, skills, or whatever for his purpose. And it didn't matter how many wives these men had, whether they had one, three, four, whatever. Concubines, maidservants, slaves, the Bible gave a lot of different titles for, these women. And some of these people were men, you know. There were men servants, male servants, governors, um, and whatnot. So again, I have respect for Nick Cannon's life. I have respect for, as far as the type of men they choose to be, you know, um, as far as like it being black women, white women, and Asian women, all that kind of stuff, that's irrelevant in this particular video. I'm not even addressing that issue. I'm just talking about quantitatively, you know, without addressing nations and mixing and all that. I'm not discussing all that. This is a man who already got his kids. It don't mean that he won't have more children. He could have more children outside of the children he had with his wife. He could have more children out there. That's between him and his wife, you know what I'm saying? But on record legally with the wife, you know, they had a lot of kids and raised them. Kids are grown and stuff, you know. He's a successful man. You know, divorce happens, you know, and he's divorced. So legally he's allowed to do what he wants. And right now he's choosing to openly admit that he has four women. And to me, women, wife, there's really no difference between those words. A woman, wife, all that. I mean, very fine lines. So I don't have a problem. I think it's great. And I think more men need to strive to be not so much like him per se, but, you know, live an honorable life. Live a life that at least can be found in the Bible. You know, live a life that at least can be found in the Bible. And that's what I see with these men. You know, more black men need to be honest about their life and be honest with the women in their life. Um, don't be deceptive. Stop lying, cheating, and being deceptive. We need to train our boys off the rip, off the rip. Own who you are. Own who you are as a man. Never let lying be an option. Since when did that flip switch? When I was coming up, we were raised to be honest. Now, that don't mean that everybody around us, all the grown-ups around us were the most honest people in the world. But at least they were, you know, if you lied to a grown-up or you lied, you know, if you were just going around lying, you get your butt beat. Did nobody want no lying kids around? You know what I'm saying? So let's train our sons to be honest about having multiple women. We train them to have multiple women. Yeah, you know, get all the hoes you want. But shh, you know, don't say nothing. You know what I'm saying? You know, well, maybe we should teach our sons, you know, a man can choose one woman, a man can choose multiple women. But be honest and be responsible for the women that you choose. If a woman wants to leave you, let her go. But for the women that want to stay with you, that you choose to be with you and they want to stay with you, love them forever. Why not? You know, that's a whole different approach than just go get all the hoes you can and just fuck them and dump them. You know, instead of living a fuck them and dump them life, live a life of all the women you choose that choose to stay with you. Let it be forever. You know, I'm not saying that a man should never break up with a woman. I'm not saying that. But when I was coming up, I'm just saying, you know, I came up in a different time. I know we live in a different time today. And I'm not saying go back and be the way the men were when I was coming up. Please don't do that. That's not even possible anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is just compare the two. Compare the two. Is all I'm saying. Just use it as a comparison. That's it. You know. And I'm saying, even as you compare, you know, Um, consider consider how to improve. And so that's what I'm doing. As a woman who endured being cheated on her entire life, no man has ever been faithful to me. Possibly in high school, one guy in high school may have the whole time we were dating. It's possible that he wasn't even looking at other girls, let alone pursuing them. You know what I mean? It's possible. It's possible. One guy in high school when I was in ninth grade. But he was so much older than me that, after his prom, I had to let him go. He was headed to college. He's headed to college. He's a great guy. And I got 3 more years of high school. I had to let him go, you know? And he was a great guy. I think that he would have been probably that guy that we would have been together forever, you know? But I didn't have the kind of support to identify such a person and to help me secure it. And he sure as hell didn't have that kind of family situation. So neither one of us had the support in our life to have two sweet kids come together and make it. So the only thing I could do was give him a wonderful senior year. I was a freshman, but I gave him a wonderful senior year because he had never dated nobody before, never had a girlfriend before. He was one of the most popular guys in the school, one of the most popular guys in the school, but had never had a girlfriend. You know what I mean? And that was because he was, like, he just wasn't one of the kind of guys, even though he was as popular as he was because of his talent, his gift. He had the kind of gift talent that could not be hidden. And his gift was bigger than the school. So he was the kind of guy that couldn't be hidden, but he was the kind of guy that most girls wouldn't choose, you know. And of course, his talent is what drew me to him. His talent was so big, and I was a type of talent myself. I was a type of talent, so it was talent, peeping talent. You know what I mean? So I didn't care that he was only like maybe 5'2". He was like maybe like 5'2", 5'3", 5'4". He's a really short guy, handsome, handsome, a bodybuilder, like a body out of this world, but he was just really super short. I didn't care about that. I was just looking at how amazing he was. You know, to me, I was amazing. So because he was more amazing than me, drew me. Here is someone that's more amazing than I perceive myself. And I actually went to him and asked, that's how I, you know, got into his heart. I went to him and asked him to help me be as great as he was. He's the only person that could train me. I want to be as great as you. Teach me. He was an excellent gymnast. Like he was like just the greatest gymnast I had ever seen. A black boy at my high school. And I just had to experience his energy. I wanted him to train my body to be like his. You know what I mean? And then I happened to find out that he was a sweet, innocent guy, a virgin, never dated and all this stuff. And and it was true. I mean, no one said anything different. I'm like, wow, wow. But anyway, I gave him a wonderful senior year. We went to his prom. He was a twin too, by chance. Twin energy has always been in my life. Twin energy. And So anyway, or he and his sister, he had a sister that was like right there, you know. And so anyway, he's the only guy possibly, could have been that forever guy, you know. But neither one of us had the kind of support in our lives, especially being 3 years apart and he's on his way to college and I'm stuck in high school, you know? So, but anyway, again, no other man has ever been faithful to me, you know? And I just decided by the time I started getting married that I'm not going to break up a marriage every time I get cheated on. How are my kids going to ever have a two-family home? And people may say you have low self-esteem, you're just stupid and weak and all that, and that could be true. It could be true. A woman that stays with a man that's just constantly running around with other women, she could possibly have low self-esteem. I could have possibly had the lowest self-esteem on earth. And I just didn't know it because I was so talented in many other places. I was a gymnast, a cheerleader, and in the honors program and college worthy and a pharmacy technician. I was just so great in so many places. And I had boyfriends and stuff in high school. And, you know, I didn't know that I had low self esteem until I was married and decided to just stay married to these cheating men. All right, But at some point, every woman has to decide how many men am I going to go through before I draw the line when it comes to cheating, anyway. When it comes to cheating, am I going to go through 100 men until I find a man that doesn't cheat? Am I going to go through 0 men and just wait for that man that I know won't cheat on me? See, that's the problem with women. Instead of us waiting for that one man that we know will not cheat on us, we'd rather burn through however many until we get to him. And in many cases, we never get to him because those, you know, 1 to 100 guys in between, we may have had a baby or 2 or 3 or something. You know what I'm saying? Went through domestic violence and we never make it to our dream guy because we let all these other guys cheat us. And the same thing can be said about men. The same thing can be said about men. How many divorces, breakups, getting your windows at your car busted and all this kind of stuff can you experience as men before you get to the one woman that you know is right for you? How many broken women are you going to burn through? Hundreds and hundreds of women are you going to have sex with until you get to the one you want to marry? What decent woman is going to want you after all of that trash? It's the same thing. I know men don't receive that, don't look at it that way. I get that. But I'm just saying, we women think of y'all like that. Whether y'all want to accept it or not, we don't like y'all being ran through either. All bust down and broken by the time you get to us either. We don't like the fact that you've treated all those other women dirty and then you think you're going to get to me and treat me like a queen. How does that work? I'm personally not interested in a man that has treated a whole bunch of women before me like dirt. I'm not. I'm just saying. And people may say, well, you old and ugly today anyway, so who cares? Well, thank God. Thank God I fit the, criteria that matches my energy of I don't want to be dogged out and trashed out anyway. So again, I take my hat off to men that can own who they are at any point in your life. Own who you are, good or bad. Own it. And if you're into multiple women, own it. If you can brag about having one woman, have a wedding, invite people, and have a ring on your finger and, live all, why can't men with multiple women have the same respect? So my channel was here to celebrate the men that are honest and say, hey, I took care of my family, we divorced, and now I'm open about how I do things. You know, some men do realize that, hey, it wasn't cool that I did all that cheating on my wife. I got other babies outside of my wife. That wasn't really cool. She ain't want that, and I forced it. Now that I'm in a position, I can be honest. I can come clean. I can, hold my, you know, head up, walking around this earth. He ain't got to dodge a lot of crap. And then the business deals that come his way, he know they solid. People that can accept him for who he is right now, he know when they shake their hand, when he shake their hand, that it's real. But when you deceptive and you always sliding, hiding, and diving and all this kind of stuff, you know, it wear on you and it wear on the women and the children involved. It make everybody feel dirty. So again, I celebrate the men, the black men, you know, that repent. Repent from deception. Repent from lying. Repent from cheating. Women and children, of honesty, of truth. And they come clean, all the way clean, and admit what they're doing and live their life accordingly. Those are the men that's worth celebrating. But those who live all secret, deceptive, lying, cheating, don't celebrate those men. What is there to celebrate? Are there men who's into just one woman? I'm sure there are. I may have met one. I may have in my life. When I was 14 years old, and that was a long time ago. I'm 55 now. I haven't met one since. But I decided I have a cutoff with my body. I'm not going to just let people run through it. And it has nothing to do with being old, ugly, black, and unwanted. I just simply don't want to be treated that way. I made that decision in high school. That's why I always had one boyfriend at a time. And usually those relationships lasted at least 1 year. And I'm not saying that, that's something good. I shouldn't have had no boyfriends. How about that? For some people, my daughter will never date. You know what I'm saying? But in my case, I was allowed to date. And that's how I chose to do it because I knew I was very popular. And I knew how I wanted to be, looked at, how I wanted to be viewed. And however I could control it, I did. You can't always control what people, think about you, but you do control how you present yourself. And by the time I was 20, I was legally married. And even though I knew my husbands were the types that were, interested in other women, looking at other women, and, I still was monogamous and faithful to them until during that second marriage when he and I, after a whole year of research, we opened up our marriage in 2012. And then I went off to Atlanta. I went out there to help one of my friends. Her husband was running for office, Fulton County clerk or something. And his last name is Chisholm. He's related to Shirley Chisholm. So I went out there to help manage his campaign, you know. And then that's when my poly life started, October 2012. And so I'm a woman. I'm a woman who live a polyamorous life. Currently, I haven't had any partners of any type for about 2 years now. But it's not about quantity, whether you have zero partners or one, two, three, four, five, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Um, I'm still poly, even if I don't have anybody at the moment. I chose to take some time off from anyone. And after 32 years of marriage, legal marriage, similar to Shaq, I raised a black family. I was successful enough and ended in marriage. I'm not going to legally marry again. The only way I would legally marry again, someone would have to be extremely wealthy and they don't have anyone else really to leave their money to. And they're like, look, lady, I want to marry you and leave all this money. And I have no one else to do it. And I'd be like, oh, well, that's different. So again, I'm not gonna ever marry again. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want a third marriage. I don't need three on my books. I got what I needed out of the first two. The first marriage, I got a family business out of it, which is a legacy. I never benefited financially from the business, but I got a legacy for my kids and grandkids. The business still exists today. It's over a 30-year-old business. And so we have legacy from that. And I got kids from that marriage, kids and grandkids. So even though I'm not legally married to anyone, listening to one snore on the other side of my bed or listening to me snore, I'm not alone. I got kids and grandkids, that I see every day. I have a daughter live with me and a grandson that live with me. And I'm happy. you know. So that's enough for me at my age and stage. Again, I already so I'm not missing anything. No. Been there and done all that. I'm just different in a different stage. Kind of like Shaq. Hell, let me live in a house with multiple adults. It could be a combination of men and women. Five adults in one house. That is like party all the time. You just have help all the time. Help all the time. I love it. People to, there's always someone home to do something with. You know, I just like the idea. personally. So I'm looking forward to a couple one day that I can live with. But I'm the kind of person I can't live somewhere without my name being on it. So it has to be a married couple that's willing to, wherever they're currently living, they can still have that property, maybe rent it out or give it to a kid or something, whatever. But wherever we move to, I just want my name on it as well. So that, if anything happened to one of them, then, I can still stay and the other person can still stay and, we still have each other. And if we want to just have each other, great. If we want to add more people, then great. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, the poly life, I think, works for people in my age group. You know, I think it would have worked um, raising my kids because I would have had a career. I would have been able to use my PhD and would have had a really lucrative career had I had other women in my home that would help me, you know, help me. Not trying to tear my family down, but help. And there's ways to negotiate where people that are helpmeets, additional helpmeets, can be compensated, well compensated. When, you have multiple adults, that's multiple incomes, multiple support for the kids. I mean, it's just a strong way to live to me. To me. I didn't get to live that way raising my kids. I didn't have the help, so I had to surrender my career. So, but now that, my youngest daughter that I raised is 31 and the youngest boy that I raised is 26. I'm 55, y'all. I'll be 56 this year. It is on and popping. I might be old, and unwanted and hit the wall and ceilings and, just tore up the whole house and all that. But at the end of the day, it's on and popping. So I'm going to make another video. I want to cut this video off and I want to talk about over the weekend. I had met a couple over the weekend. That couple and I decided that, well, I let them decide actually. I gave them, the option to decide because I don't need long. After I meet a couple, I'll know if I want to see them again. So after the first meeting, I just kind of like give them not an ultimatum. That's not what it is, but the option to keep seeing me or let's cut it off right here. So I guess that's an ultimatum. I guess. So the bottom line is I gave them one. So, but I want to do a different video because I don't want to take away from Shaq's message. Again, good job, Shaq. Good job, you know, raising a black family and doing a great job. And great job for being honest about how you're living today. I think a lot of young men that strive to be red pillars could, look at how you're doing it. That's a way to do it. You know, um, even, what blue pillars, I don't know what color the other pills are, but even guys that are in a much less tax bracket or don't have nowhere near that kind of money, which are the kind of guys that I know, just regular guys. Regular guys are the kinds that I know. You know what I mean? Like, don't make too much more than about maybe 200 grand a year. Those are the kind of guys I know. 200 grand and less. I've dated guys that made like 30. I dated a guy for a lot of years and he only made like, what, 34? Didn't even make 40 grand a year. So it's not the amount, you know, especially when you have multiple partners. So if I have a one guy in my life that has like, that's making like, let's say 200 grand, then every guy don't have to make that. A guy that makes 30,000 a year could be a lover, but maybe he's the one that's just very sensual, always available. You know what I mean? The one that's always available will probably not make as much money as the one that's always gone, that's making a lot more. And I think that, especially a woman at my age that will never marry again, it's nice to have those options. It's nice to have options, be able to date, a rich guy and be able to date a quote unquote, just a regular working class dude. It's nice to have the range. Because the rich guy, I only need to see you a few times a year when you're available. But the guy that, that clocks in at 8 in the morning and is home by 5, and got the rest of his day available, well, that's the kind of guy that, that a woman can enjoy life with. So, men, they have their way of looking at life, and we women have our way of looking at life. And it doesn't have to be a competition, and it doesn't have to be a compromise. There can be room for everyone to be fulfilled. It's all about knowing who you are, getting your needs met, and knowing how to negotiate it and being willing to walk away. You got to know when to hold and when to fold. So I think that's how Shaq has lived his life. He's not only won on the basketball court, but he won in family life. And I mean, I know it ended in divorce, but just because something ended in divorce or death doesn't mean that it wasn't successful. No matter how much I get on here and quote unquote complain about, especially that second marriage, it still was successful in so many ways. Even though, you know, a lot of crazy crap blew up in our faces, bad choices and things. At the end of the day, a lot of good still came out of it. I don't just talk about the bad only. Balance is important. And so after Shaq's divorce, he took advantage of the opportunity to just, hey, look, I'm this kind of player. This is how I roll. And I have a lot of respect for that. Whether you make his kind of money, which I've never, dated anybody that made that kind of money, of course. But, whether I'm, with a $200,000, a year guy, or whether I'm with a 30,000, you know, guy kind of thing. At the end of the day, my independence has nothing to do with them anyway. My assets, my children, what I do for my kids. What my kids' fathers do for them is what he do for them, and what I do for my kids is what I do for my kids. But I'm independent. This last divorce, taught me just how independent I have to be in this world. Even if I'm legally married to somebody, I have to maintain a certain level of independence. I learned after this last divorce that when you give a person the power to feed you, you give them the power to starve you. And he did try. He did try. But, I'm a minimalist and, I'm a grazer of the land. So I survived. I did not, starve out. I endured that marriage. I ran it out. I ran it out like a track star. There were a lot of, issues. But okay, but yeah, I'm thankful that, Shaq is, being honest. You know, I'm thankful. And more men need to do it. More men need to have the courage to say, hey, this is how I like it. And you'd be surprised how many women, you'd be surprised how many women will choose the option to share when they know that they have the ability to negotiate their terms. And then there's other people involved as check and balance and to, hold that man accountable, hold each other accountable. kind of like a board meeting, in the workplace. You have, your board of directors. They hold the business accountable to certain terms and conditions. So that's what poly relationships are kind of like, you know. So, but anyway, guys, I just want to celebrate the men that live an honest, uh, any type of poly life, whether it's polygamy, um, polyamory, whatever. You have multiple relationships, all adults involved, are consensual, and, and there's honesty. No one's perfect, of course, but, no one has to be deceptive, sneaking, lying, cheating, and all of that. Embarrassing themselves, their family, their kids, everybody. It's just not necessary. And, the more honest you are with yourself and those around you, the more honest life, your business, your community grows based on your honesty. Your community grows based on your honesty. But I do recognize some people prefer to be sneaky, quiet, deceptive, and, silent and moving silent, all that stuff. To be honest and fair and negotiating and all that, they just would not survive. They just it would give them a headache. You know what I mean? It would make them sick. So that's why, men in my life that don't want to stay, I don't beg, and I make it easy to depart. But as long as we're in agreement and we're still there, I'm going to give it my all. As long as I agree to be with someone, I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. Even if they don't, I'm still not going to, as long as I agree to be with you, I'm going to hold up my end, even if you don't. And I keep really good records, and I know how to, balance out in the end if needed. So hats off to the honest men. Let's celebrate the honest men, you know. And then men that struggle, you can learn something on this channel. You can learn. Keep watching. Keep watching. Learn how to become more honest. Repent. You know. Sometimes honesty comes with risk. You may lose a lot of people, but through your honesty, like I was saying, you will attract a whole new community based on your honesty with yourself and those around you. So on this channel, I take a risk of admitting being a polyamorous woman. I take a risk, but I'm old enough to not care. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a young woman who need a man to feed me and the kids. I'm an older woman who's already lived that life. I went through it. Okay, fine. No problem. But I endured. I've lived to tell about it now. And I want to encourage everyone to be honest about who they are, even if you have to start from scratch. There's nothing more attractive than an honest person. a person that live with intentions, who can own themselves completely, good or bad, who can who can endure and not only endure but prepare for the criticism. Honor and praise is easy to endure. Well, I don't know how easy it is all the time, but at the end of the day, it's really difficult for most people to be criticized, to endure the criticism. Prepare, practice being, practice people, throwing tomatoes and eggs at you. You know, people always telling me how crazy I look and sound on my channel and telling me I'm ugly or whatever. Well, thank God my second marriage prepared me. I used all of his rejection, all that rejection and all that stuff that we went through. I used all of that to prepare me for all the people that's going to reject me. Rejected me while watching me. Rejected me while watching, just like my ex did. Rejected me while staying in the marriage. Rejected me while staying. 25 years is a long time to not really want somebody, but he stayed. So I know what it's like already. I have a lot of practice and experience. So I'm thankful for honest people. And I know how much work and how much sacrifice goes into living this openly and honest, knowing the criticism we face. So I can't wait to start the next video to describe, the couple that tomato. I don't always do that, but some couples I wean them out quick, you know. So, all right, guys, all the men out there that are poly in whatever way, and I know that the men that are, polygamist or polygamist, um, they think they're, more committed. They think they quote unquote better than men that are polyamorous. There's always going to be wars and, you know, people complaining no matter what lifestyle you're in. No matter what lifestyle you're in, there's always going to be the pros and cons to it. So, yeah, but to me, all poly is the same. You have multiple people that you're involved with. The people are aware of each other. Otherwise, it's called cheating, being deceptive, lying, and stuff like that. Yeah. And it just amazes me the people that wait in the background for years. I mean, like, people will wait in the background, be the other woman, be the other man, silently and quiet for years, waiting, you know, helping tear down what you currently have. It's amazing. I thank God I don't have that experience. Hopefully I don't ever experience that. I don't want to experience that. So I try not to speak negative about it, but it's just something that I just don't like. I just don't like. And usually when we have something that's that strong that we're so strong against, end up being something we have to experience. I hate it when stuff like that happens, but um no, but I'm too old. I already made the choices a long time ago not to live that life. But I've had friends and I've known people that did. I've known women that spent years being the other woman. So it's just, I don't know. Ugh. That's all I can say is ugh. And I'm not trying to be judgmental. It's just something I don't like. Can I like can I not like something without being judgmental? You know what I mean? I mean, I date married couples. So I know I value I understand the value of multiple relationships. I understand the value of it. I just can't stand it when people are just lying and cheating and being deceptive with it. Ugh, I just want this. Anyway, that's why I make this channel. Because honesty is that important to me in relationships, even if it's multiple partners. The honesty is more important. And I can't stand liars, men or women that's just cheating, you know, being deceptive. Leave one person's bed and lie and sneak and drive across town somewhere to be in somebody else's bed. That's what my ex did to me. And the kids used to see him, you know how people had those trackers on the phone and stuff. The kids used to be like, why dad in Flint? That's so embarrassing, but hey, he put us through that shit. So it is what it is. And so, I'm just thankful for honest men, because when you're lied to, the feeling of betrayal is just unnecessary. It's an unnecessary thing that people put each other through, the betrayal from being lied to and cheated on and being deceptive and sneaky when you don't have to be, you know. So I take my hat off again to Shaq, Nick Cannon, and any other men that are open out there. You ain't got to be a celebrity, you know. You're If you're listening to me right now, I can see that I have 6 likes, on this live video right now. But I don't always get to see exactly how many until sometimes after the video is over. So there could be more than 6 likes. So there are people, men, women, that have multiple partners that are honest about it and can agree with me. That's my audience. So I want to take my hat off to you too. Pat yourself on the back. Keep being honest with consent, with adults, and I'll make more videos. You know, my email address is drleisha the preacher at gmail.com. If you have any video coverage of other, celebrities or people like that have multiple relationships that are polygamous or anything like that, send it to me and I can look at it and I can give commentary on things that you send me. You can also make comments on this video. All right, so click like, subscribe, hit the notification button. Um, Also share my videos. I'm not monetized anywhere on social media, but I do have PayPal for those who just want to be a blessing. I have 5,900 videos now. I do a lot of work on this channel, but I'm not monetized. So my PayPal is Dr. Leisha the Preacher. You all be blessed and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye bye.